fascinating to me how they're harnessing data from cars that are farming the data and bringing it back to the mothership, and then the mothership is putting it out to all the rest of the fleet to make the experience better. Wow. That is advanced AI.
Yes. Wow.
Are you goofing on me, or do you think that's cool?
No, I do think it's cool. I just have a very long way of explaining.
Thank you very much. Reduce latency when starting from a stop by accounting for lead vehicle jerk. Now, does that mean that the guy in front of you is a jerk?
No, I think it means the guy driving could be considered a jerk.
Oh, me. Hello and welcome to another episode of Out of Spec Dave, where this morning when I woke up and I got into the car, I noticed that I got a software release. And I didn't know that it would even get a software release at a motel. I thought it needed Wi-Fi, but it must have downloaded perhaps the release on my, I don't know if I threw a hotspot or whatever.
I don't know, I just knew you were very excited.
I was excited, and so I got this software release. It's early access program FSD Beta 10.69.2.2. The person who had this car prior to me, he didn't pay for full self-driving for the entire car, but he had or she had paid for the $199 a month full self-driving beta. And so the car continuously gets all of the updates as if it is a full self-driving car. What I thought I would do is go over all the different improvements and go over the release notes with your help, Kathy, because you're good at this stuff.
Oh yeah, because I'm so helpful.
No, listen, don't kid yourself. You've had a lot of Teslas, you've used them, and your input will be invaluable. So, you know, we're driving home from Maine right now, and we've got some things to say.
Yeah.
And ooh, look at this nice GTI going by right there. I thought it was an R, but that color is really hot. Anyway, back to squirrel, right? Anyway, thanks for watching another episode of Out of Spec Dave, and let's get into it. Overall, this release has quite a bit of fine-tuning with respect to the FSD, full self-driving functionality, which again, my car does not actually take advantage of currently because I'm not paying for it. All of the Teslas today that are sold are capable from a hardware standpoint of handling this with the full self-driving computer that's in there. But what they've done is they've made some refinements to the FSD software. Not just some, a lot of refinements to it. The Tesla Vision camera that's up above that looks at the roadway, again, just as a vision-based system. They've made some improvements to that. The cabin camera itself that is looking at the occupants in the camera. And here we are crossing over to Connecticut. 1, 2, 3. Connecticut. All right. So, you know, the cabin camera is good. They've made some adjustments and some improvements to the seatbelt system, which I'll go over. The adaptive suspension, which I think is very creative and an effective, economical, efficient way to achieve what a lot of other cars may have much more higher price points than these cars. And then also some functionality in the green light traffic chime for green light cameras. But let's talk about some of the features that are in this FSD 10.69.2.2 beta release, because there's a lot here, and I'm not going to even pretend to understand a lot of what they're talking about here. But it seems as though the changes that Tesla has made with respect to FSD in their software, it relates to not only city driving, but also highway driving. And specifically with respect to highway driving, it talks about lane changes and the way with which it actually will predict if a car is going past you and you put your turn signal on, and how it starts to accelerate when it knows that the car is going faster than you are, and it'll move over and start accelerating at a faster rate. It sounds like they're going to be having some improvements in terms of how it fuses all this information together. They're trying to make the experience a lot closer, if you will, to what I would do. So for example, I don't have FSD. I put on my turn signal and I manually, at my pace, with my years of experience in driving, I go over, take the lane, and then I double click again. To be able to mimic that exact experience, that is what is acceptable to me. They're making some improvements in their FSD technology. Again, I don't have lane changing in this particular car. So, whoop, you see that? That's one of the reasons why it might be nice to have lane changing. I didn't get far enough over, and I turned the turn signal off, and then it jammed me back over. So anyway, one of the other things that it's doing is, I guess, in the city, some of the improvements for unprotected left-hand turns, more appropriate speed profiles. We've seen some of the videos on YouTube. It's a little bit of a scary thing. So it sounds like they're making some improvements to unprotected left-hand turns, and there's some changes there. There's some low-speed maneuvering volumes that they are changing. This occupancy network they talk a lot about in the FSD release notes. I need to learn a little bit more about that, but you know, you gotta love Tesla, right? You know, not only does the car have fart mode, but they're now saying that this is a quote, this new feature for arbitrary low-speed moving volumes from the occupancy network, it allows finer control for more precise object shapes that cannot be easily represented by the cuboid primitive. You with me so far? Like, I have no idea what they're saying. This required predicting velocity at every 3D voxel. Again, I don't know what they're saying. And then they say, we may now control for slow-moving UFOs. Right? You know, like, that I get. That's
you get that.
So what I think is going on is there's been some noise, in where the FSD doesn't necessarily pick up objects that are in the road as cleanly as it should. They're making some improvements there. They've upgraded their kinematics to a 2-stage architecture. I don't really know what they're talking about here, but taking all the data as far as velocity and acceleration and yaw rates and steering angles and things like that.
I'm sure there's plenty of engineers out there.
They'll know, right? But they're making
it to you in normal speed.
Yeah, they'll give it to you in normal speed, but there's a lot. There's also improvements to smoothness for protected right-hand turns, and looking at the associated traffic lights and all of that. They are making improvements. This is a good one here. Reduced false slowdowns near crosswalks. So it was done with improved understanding of pedestrian and bicycle intent based on their motion. So not only are they saying, okay, I see a person there or a bicycle there, but if that person or bicycle is moving and there's a crosswalk there that it sees in the vision-based camera system, now it's going to actually slow down. Whereas if it sees that the person is actually walking away from the intersection, I guess I'm just reading this for the first time, but conceptually, it's not going to have a false alarm and slow down for a crosswalk if it sees the person. That's pretty cool.
I think that's great. Do you know about little animals? Would it see a little animal go past you?
I don't know how little the animal needs to be, but one of the things that they did was they are improving the recall of animals by 34%. How they come up with that? By doubling the size of the auto-labeled training set. Okay, so I get it. So dog, cow, kangaroo, right? Squirrel.
He loves cows.
He loves cows, right? So I don't know. Maybe they've doubled the inventory of potential animals that it could be. So if it's a sloth on the side of the road
Oh, the poor little sloth.
versus, let's just say, a rabbit, right? Now the car will know, oh, sloth, I can take my time. I've got all the time in the world, right? Remember DMV, the sloth, the DMV. But if it's a rabbit, maybe it'll actually slow down faster. So look, they're doing their part to maybe save the animals, which is great. They're enabling creeping for visibility. So let's say you come to a stop and you're in the city and you're under FSD, and now all of a sudden it just doesn't see cars coming from either direction, so it just goes. And then it gets into the middle of the intersection and it sees a car. and it just stops in the middle of the intersection. I've actually seen that happen in a video that Kyle shot. So what they're doing is they're enabling creeping for visibility at any intersection where objects might cross the ego's path. Ego's path? Is this car like it's got its own ego? I don't know. And that's regardless of whether or not there's traffic controls there or not. So I think that's pretty neat. Increased recall of forking lanes, right, by 36% by having topographical tokens, especially when ego, again, I guess that's the car, is making a turn, by improving the onboard trajectory estimation. So let's just say you're going down the road and all of a sudden the road forks off. You can go left or you can go right. Sadly, there's been a lot of situations where, you know, Tesla's, it doesn't know which way to go, or it doesn't commit, and it sounds like they, you know, sometimes they it'll clip the whatever the guardrail is there or what have you. So it also has improved recall of object detection, eliminating 26% of missing detections for faraway crossing vehicles by tuning the loss function used during training. I don't know what that means, other than it's doing something better there for recalling objects that are in its path. Improved speed when entering a highway. This is good. This is interesting to me. By better handling of upcoming map speed changes, which increases the confidence of merging onto the highway. So if you're coming onto the highway, like right here, and the speed limit's 65 and you're only going 45, it sounds like the car will accelerate faster while it's still in the merged lane or getting on.
Well, that would be very intuitive.
Yeah, I agree.
That's how we drive, I think.
Reduce latency when starting from a stop by accounting for lead vehicle jerk. Now, does that mean that the guy in front of you is a jerk?
No, I think it means the guy driving could be considered a jerk.
Oh, me.
Could be considered.
Okay, so that probably goes into the overall Tesla score, whether or not they're gonna, you know, imagine this: you pay $15,000 or $12,000 for FSD, and Tesla, you don't pass the test, right? You don't pass it, right? Because you're a jerk. Because you're a jerk. Like, oh, and then I just put on the AP there after taking the lane myself, and I was too far over to the right-hand lane. It jerked me over.
Right.
Who's the jerk, Tesla? If you got something you want to say to them, sounds like you can actually submit a video to them. So whether or not they'll actually listen to it or not, but you know, for those that don't have a YouTube platform to share their impressions, that's a great way to get feedback over to Tesla. Because, you know, if you try and call Tesla, they don't answer the phone ever. It's like crazy. I mean, if you call the local shop, sometimes they will, but usually if you want to try to make a Tesla service appointment, you know, this rear right door handle is sticking now in this car, and it's the only thing really wrong with the car that I've had. And I made a Tesla service appointment right on the app. Anyway, let's jump into the next few objects, talking about the cabin camera, Tesla Vision update, seatbelt tensioners, green light. A lot of good stuff in this release. I love it. I'm not sure if this is modifications to it or something that is brand new. But your car, the GV60, has very sophisticated technology that uses cameras and different types of detection that will see if the road ahead is rough or not. And if it does, what it will do is it will actively strengthen or firm up the suspension before you get to the rougher road.
It's very nice of my car.
Okay. And generally that kind of a feature of interactively reading the road is only available on supercars that cost like $250,000 and up.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh yeah, it's very sophisticated technology. But what I see here today in this early access program, FSD Beta, it's version 10.69.2.2, is Tesla adaptive suspension. And what Tesla is doing is it has a fleet of cars out there. I mean, today they just reported they sold 343,000 cars in the last quarter. I mean, think about it.
It's pretty impressive.
Huge amount of cars where they're taking all the data. Like, we just went over that big bump right there. Tesla knows that we went over that bump, and they're logging. As long as when you go into the maps, or when you first log on, you say, are you okay to share your data with Tesla? And most people do, right? So what Tesla is doing is they're aggregating all this data, and they're mapping out all the roads that their entire fleet is driving on, and they know where there are smooth parts in the road and where there are bumps from the interactions that other cars in the fleet have experienced. And what they're doing is now they're starting to pass that intelligence on to us, so that when the car knows, based on GPS, that you're coming up to a spot where the road is a little bit bumpy, it's not going to read that the road is bumpy. It's going to know that the road is bumpy based on what other cars have experienced. And then it will, prior to reaching that bumpy spot, it will actually firm up the suspension. Or if you're in the low setting, which this car this car is adjustable air suspension. You know, you can be very high, medium, or low. And if you're cruising around in low, what it will do is it will raise it up before you get to the bumpy section, and it will raise it, let's say, from low to medium, so that when you hit the bumpy section, it's actually a little more travel in the suspension. You won't bottom out, and it'll handle the bumps better. That is really cool. And in order to activate that, you have to go into your controls menu, into suspension, and you have to click on adaptive suspension damping and turn it on, and select either comfort or the auto setting, which I have comfort setting set. So I like that. I think that's pretty cool. What do you think?
I think that sounds really impressive.
It's not quite as good as what you have in the GV60, right? Because your car doesn't depend on other cars, and there aren't a lot of GV60s.
Because of the cameras.
Because your car is reading the road, right? This car is just taking data. And I don't know, both are amazing. You know, this car will it'll get better over time, right? Whereas your car, you put it on any road, anywhere, and it will read the road. It doesn't need the data. But I'll take what they're doing. This is like a poor man's way, a cheaper way of achieving a similar thing. Now, what'll happen when, let's just say, there's a rough section of road, and Tesla flags it as a rough section of road, and then they run and they pave it.
Well, I was going to say, in a construction zone,
yeah,
it has to get updated after
well,
that.
What will happen is
reading that the road is smooth.
Right, because the cars will go over it again, and every time, so if 10 cars or 20 cars, can you imagine, like, the software engineers at Tesla having a field day with this data saying, you know what, the last 10 cars that have gone over, or the last 100 cars that have gone over it, they haven't experienced any bumps, so let's actually, I mean, it's just fascinating to me how they're harnessing data from cars that are farming the data and bringing it back to the mothership, and then the mothership is putting it out to all the rest of the fleet to make the experience better. Wow. That is advanced AI.
Yes. Wow.
Are you goofing on me, or do you think that's cool?
No, I do think it's cool. I just have a very long way of explaining.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the next feature I want to go over here in the new software release is green light traffic light chime. Now, you know, in your GV60, when you're behind a car and you're at a stoplight and you're not in HDA, meaning highway driver assistance, you're just driving the car. What happens when the car in front of you pulls away?
I get a notification.
You get a notification, right?
Car ahead moving, or it says something.
Yeah, it says car ahead departing or pulling ahead.
Right.
So now with this new software feature within this release here is a green traffic light chime. And what will happen is a chime will play when the traffic light that you're waiting for turns green. And if you're waiting behind another vehicle, the chime will play once the vehicle advances, unless you're in autopilot. If you're in autopilot, it'll see that the car pulled away and it'll pull away for you. But it's when you'll get that chime in this car now when you're not in autopilot and the car pulls away, or if the traffic light turns green. What's really cool is when you're at a stoplight.
I didn't catch that. Or if the traffic light turns green.
Yeah, so if you're
my car doesn't do that.
No, I know that.
Yeah, that's a great feature.
Yeah, so you know how in the Tesla you see the traffic lights and you see the color green, yellow, red?
Yes.
When that traffic light turns green now and you're the first car on the line, it's gonna bing bing, it'll chime you. How cool is that?
That is one of my favorite features. I remember when I had the Model Y, when I get off my exit for my morning commute, the sun is directly in my face and I can't see the stoplight. I always have to put the visor down and then I peek around.
Oh, right, okay.
So when I had the Model Y, I just looked at my screen and I knew it turned green.
But you had to watch it turn green.
Yeah, I had to watch it.
Now with this newest software release, it will chime at you when it turns green.
Oh, that's even better.
Because it's detecting that it's turning green.
But again, there's where Tesla's better than my car because I don't have that feature.
Right, okay.
That's a great feature.
That's a great feature.
And I have a real world example.
I know. All right, next up on the new features here is a seatbelt system enhancement. What this does is that if the car detects that it's going to get into a frontal collision, it's like, that's it, we're crashing.
Yeah.
What it will do is it'll tighten up the seatbelts ahead of the crash proactively. So that you know how like if you're leaning forward, sometimes the seatbelt can go, it'll actually pull the seatbelt tighter so that when you crash, hopefully you'll be a little bit, a little less injury.
Is that a feature that they've never had before?
Apparently not.
I really feel like I used to have that. I don't know why. I guess not. It just makes a lot of sense.
I don't know. It says it's in this latest feature. I've never had such a. You've never had a situation, a panic situation, when you're going to crash, right?
Well, that's what you think.
At least,
not since.
I mean, that I know of.
Not in the last decade, anyway.
Okay, but I'm talking about in a Tesla.
No.
Have you ever experienced a situation where you're like, oh wow, I'm going to crash, and you felt the seatbelt tension? So,
no, but I feel like there are times when I've gone in a car.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I can't move because the belt is so tight. What is that? And then it like locks up or something. And you're still sitting still.
You mean so what it does is it locks and then you can't. It doesn't have the comfort setting. Right. Yeah. This is a little bit different than that. I understand what you're saying. Some of the cars on the market will do things like, for example, if you're in autopilot or whatever brand of autopilot flavor you take, specifically the Audis are what I think of. What the seatbelts will do, if the car doesn't detect that you have your hands on the wheel, and it'll start to beep at you, then it'll start to light, and then what it'll do is the Audi will yank on your seatbelt like to wake you up, better than any car I've ever seen. It's amazing how that works. I believe that's in the Audi, the Big e-tron. I don't know if that was something that was in the Q4 e-tron that I tested when I was out but if I'm wrong, and it's not the Big e-tron, the 55 that does that, whatever car, you can let me know in the comments. But I'm pretty sure the Audi does that. But all this is saying here is that when you're going to crash, this Tesla is going to tighten up the seatbelt to hopefully have you have less injury. Pretty cool. Okay, so another feature that's in this early access program, FSD, above the rear view mirror, there's a little tiny round circle. And what that is, right there, you see it? It's a video camera. And what it's doing in this latest software is that the cabin camera above that rear view mirror right up there can now determine your driver attentiveness or unattentiveness and provide you with audible alerts. So if you're on autopilot and you're looking down here and watching a video on an iPad or something like that, or if you fall asleep, what this will do is it will warn you that you don't have your eyes on the road. Because even though autopilot is it's a driver assistance. It's not full self-driving in the sense that Tesla names it full self-driving. You still have the responsibility as the driver to drive the car, right? So what this is doing monitoring your eyes, and it's saying, hey, Dave, wake up, you don't have your eyes on the road. Now, the thing is, what this release notes say is that if this data, like if you click on you're okay to share data with Tesla, so like all the road stuff we were talking about, if you share your data with Tesla, then they will have that information. If you choose not to share your data with Tesla, they're saying that the data as to whether or not you're asleep or looking down or looking away will stay with the car. A lot of rubber banding traffic here, and I'm sure this is watching my eyes as I'm doing this. So again, I personally think that's a good feature. If you don't have your eyes on the road and you're relying on autopilot, I have some friends, I'm not going to name names, but I have some personal friends, close friends, that claim, oh yeah, the car drives itself. This car does not drive itself. It has great driver assistance, but it's not as if you can rely on this car to drive itself. So while I'm on this entire trip, up to Maine and back, I have not had one phantom braking incident happen. Now we're starting to get to that, to dawn or dusk is when a lot of times I think the camera system, because this is it's a complete vision-based system. They've killed radar on this car, and Tesla doesn't believe in LiDAR. So this is completely just vision-based, which is the camera up in here. And as the light starts to get down towards the horizon, if you're coming across a bridge, it has trouble detecting, and you get that phantom braking, which you've experienced, right? Oh yeah. How freaky is that?
It's freaky. And, I have to hold on. What's happening.
But did you experience that in your Model Y? You did, I think. Well, you didn't really use autopilot that much. Yeah, I know.
I think it happened a lot when you were driving.
When I was driving the Model Y, right. They just made some minor improvements to the Tesla Vision update. Bottom line is, we were just talking about how the car relies on the camera for detecting what's around it for the auto steer. They've made some improvements to the Tesla Vision update that I now, my understanding is that it will be available. You have settings of following distance between 1 and 7. It'll be invoked between settings 2 and 7, not 1. That's number one. And then number 2, it now gives you the ability to use autopilot up to 85 miles an hour. Whereas I believe it used to only be 80 miles an hour. And while around here in the East Coast, 85 is plenty, out west, where the speed limits are 85 and people are going, in Utah or wherever, in Montana, 85 is just not fast enough, right?
Wasn't there also a limit that you couldn't set it more than 5 miles over the speed limit?
In certain types of roads, that's right. Highway roads. But if you have those roads that are like one lane going one way and the other, I believe there is a limitation in autopilot that's 5 over. It won't allow you to do anything more. I haven't tested that out recently, but I recall you're right.
I remember that just from the times in Florida.
And so if the speed limit's 55 on a double lane road, all autopilot would allow you to do is go 60, right? Now there are settings within autopilot which cool car right there, Plymouth Fury. Actually, that's a car just like Peter DeVita had when he was a kid.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So you can do 10-mile offset, 5-mile offset. There's settings in there, but I think you're right. On certain types of roads, country roads, it's max 5 over, which kind of makes it useless.
Well, I know you get frustrated sometimes.
Yeah.
So I want to go faster.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah.
What this told me is that you have to go under software and security, under privacy settings, you have to allow cabin camera analytics that you're able to share that information with Tesla. I'm okay with that. So I've said it's okay to share all the data with Tesla. So, if you're not about data sharing, turn that off. Make sure you turn that off in your Tesla. If you're okay with it, turn it on. Make sure you turn it on. Help the community a little bit better. But again, that's related to this cabin camera up there. So, they're collecting data and they're going about it with the lawyers by asking. So just if you do select it, don't forget that you selected it, because it's
they know that you've selected.
They know that you've selected it, and it will always be capturing that data, always. Well, you know, Kathy, look, I will say that this kind of concludes the video, but the one thing that Tesla's so smart, by giving me all these FSD early release notes or release notes, you know what I want?
What?
I want to pay the $199 to try out all these features that are in the FSD.
I think that's a great idea.
I mean, I got to have the time, but I think at some point in the near future, I want to test out all this stuff with FSD. Everyone says FSD is getting better, and maybe this is the release that is making it that much better.
So let me ask you, for $199,
yeah,
you get to test it, and what's the time frame on that?
30 days.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you get it for a month.
Right.
And, you know, what's nice is if you, I mean, for me, I definitely want to try it out. So, because of all these features. But what I like is some of the things that are creeping into FSD, you know, they want $6,000 for enhanced autopilot. And then they want another $6,000 for full-blown FSD. But for $199 for the whole month, you can try out full-blown FSD, which includes enhanced autopilot, which those are things like lane changes or getting off the exit or guiding yourself to, you know, from point A to point B, at least getting off the exit and then coming to a complete stop. We've had that in the past.
Well, I was going to ask, is there a time limit of when you can choose to start this trial offer?
I could choose to, you know what's amazing here? I could go right on here, click this, upgrades right now.
Don't upgrade now.
I'm not going to, but look at this. Full self-driving subscription, $199 a month, excluding tax. So it includes tax. It's already got, you know whose credit card it has on file? It's got your credit card. Oh, I should hit this.
No, what I was going to say is,
yeah,
what I think you should try that is your next road trip down to Florida.
Yeah, maybe.
If you're allowed to hold off your subscription.
Oh yeah, no.
Until then.
Yeah, no, I can go, what I'm saying is I can go right now and swipe and I'll have FSD. The car will immediately get it.
Okay, so
I don't need it now for this trip.
No, but I think you hold off until our next huge road trip, and then you have all that way to really give it a full try.
Yeah, so it'll give you navigate on autopilot, auto lane change, auto park, summon, traffic light and stoplight control, and then coming later this year it says auto steer on city streets. Oh,
it's a very fancy car.
It is very fancy. And this bump we just went over, it's going to know that we went over it and tell everybody else in the network. And you can thank me for that, because I'm the one who went over that bump. All right. So anyway, thanks again for watching another episode of Out of Spec Dave with Out of Spec Mom sitting here in the passenger seat, co-pilot extraordinaire.
And always getting an education.
Always, yeah, absolutely. Always be learning, ABL, and always be charging too. Have a good one, everyone. Bye bye.